It was supposed to be just another normal morning. I stepped out of my house, coffee in hand, badge on my chest, ready for another day at the police station. But the second I saw that bright green slip fluttering under my windshield wiper, I knew something was off. At first, I figured it was a flyer or a takeout menu. No big deal. But as I pulled it free and read the words printed in bold across the top, my stomach dropped. HOA violation, $79, fine. The reason? Improper lawn maintenance. I blinked in disbelief and glanced at my yard. The grass was green, freshly mowed just days ago, and looked the same way it had for the past 15 years I'd lived there. But apparently, someone had decided that my grass was half an inch too long. I barely had time to process it when I heard the sharp click of high heels on concrete. I turned and saw her, Karen Mitchell, the new HOA board member, strutting down the sidewalk with her tablet in hand like she was patrolling a crime scene. Her tone was sugary sweet, but her words sliced like a blade. She quoted HOA regulations like scripture, citing section this and paragraph that, all while barely glancing up from her screen. And just like that, I knew this wasn't about the grass. Not really. What I didn't know then was that this small, ridiculous fine would be the first domino to fall. What started as a petty power move would unravel a scheme far deeper than anyone imagined. And Karen? Well, let's just say she picked the wrong lawn to mess with, because I wasn't just another neighbor. I'm the chief of police, and I was about to find out just how dirty things really were. Karen Mitchell wasn't just a new board member. She was a walking HOA nightmare, wrapped in pastel cardigans and designer heels. In just 3 weeks of her self-declared neighborhood reform, she managed to turn our peaceful community into her personal dictatorship. And she ruled with a tablet in one hand and a smug smile that made your blood boil. That morning, as I stood in my uniform holding the $79 violation slip, she didn't even bother to look up when I asked about it. Section 7, paragraph 3, she chirped, tapping away on her screen like she was conducting a federal investigation. Your grass is approximately 3.5 inches tall. Maximum allowed is 3. Her tone was syrupy and fake, the kind that made you want to throw your coffee. I tried to stay calm. 20 years in law enforcement teaches you not to snap at people drunk on their own power. But it was hard when she turned and said, without a hint of irony, "Oh, and you'll want to address those garden gnomes. They're not on the approved decoration list." I blinked. My garden gnomes, the ones my late wife had collected with so much joy. They'd sat peacefully by my flower bed for over a decade, never bothering a soul. But Karen had spoken. And in Karen's world, if it wasn't sterile, uniform, and blessed by the holy HOA handbook, it had to go. Then she had the audacity to mention my mailbox color. Yes, apparently classic white was no longer acceptable. It had to be pristine pearl white from a specific paint collection. According to her, mine was an aesthetic disruption. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She acted like my mailbox was lowering national property values. This wasn't about lawn care, gnomes, or mailboxes. It was about control, her desperate need to assert dominance over people who had better things to do than bow to her clipboard. And it was becoming clear that she wasn't going to stop until the entire neighborhood looked and acted exactly how she wanted. But what Karen didn't realize was that her little reign of tyranny was about to crash headfirst into something much stronger than her HOA rulebook. Me. At first, I thought I was just unlucky, caught in the crosshairs of a power-hungry HOA enforcer. But the more I watched Karen work her way through the neighborhood, the more I realized this wasn't about enforcement. It was a campaign of control. A pattern started to emerge, one that lit every red flag in my 25 years of law enforcement experience. Karen wasn't just enforcing rules. She was targeting people, and not just anyone. She was going after the very people who kept this community alive and safe. Nurses, firefighters, teachers, retirees. I saw it firsthand the morning she marched up to Sarah's house, tablet in hand, snapping pictures like she was collecting evidence for a trial. Sarah, our neighbor and ER nurse, had just gotten home from a brutal night shift. Bloodshot eyes, scrubs still on, barely able to stand. And there was Karen, photographing her garbage bins, citing her for leaving them out too long. My fists clenched. The woman had just spent 16 hours saving lives, and now she was being slapped with a violation over trash? What kind of person does that? Then came Mark, the firefighter who lived around the corner. Karen fined him for a basketball hoop his kids had used for 5 years without complaint. The Martinez family, fined for leaving their Christmas lights up 2 days late. Why? They had been at a family funeral out of state. These weren't accidents. They were calculated strikes on people who didn't have the time or energy to fight back. Each story added fuel to the fire growing in my chest. I started mapping it all out, tracking fines, dates, who they were given to. The pattern was undeniable. Karen's citations weren't random. They were deliberate. She was using HOA rules to punish those who couldn't constantly be home, those who worked odd hours, those who had once opposed her rise to power. The conflict was no longer just about me or my gnomes. Karen had declared war on the people who served and protected this community, and she didn't even realize that one of them was about to fight back with more than just words. She had picked the wrong neighborhood, and she had no idea who was watching. 2 days after I received that ridiculous $79 violation, I came home from a brutal double shift, worn out, aching, and desperate for sleep. But the moment I turned onto my street, exhaustion gave way to disbelief. 2 black SUVs were parked directly in front of my driveway, completely blocking access to my garage. Bold white letters on the sides read, HOA Security, like something out of a bad made-for-TV movie. My first thought? Karen. And sure enough, there she was, marching across my lawn in heels and a designer suit like she owned the whole block. She was holding her tablet like a weapon, snapping photos of everything from my garden hose to my welcome mat, as if she'd found her latest criminal empire. Every flash of her camera felt like a slap in the face, but I held my ground. 20 years on the force had taught me that staying calm rattles a bully more than shouting ever could. I stepped out of the car. "You're blocking my driveway," I said evenly. "I suggest you move those vehicles before I have to escalate this." Karen turned on her heel, smug as ever. "Oh, it's you again, Mr. Johnson, our most persistent rule breaker," she sneered. She listed my supposed crimes like they were felony charges, unpaid fine, illegal gnomes, and now, get this, non-regulation mailbox color. That's when I noticed something strange. The 2 men leaning against the SUVs didn't look like professional security officers. Their uniforms were sloppy, badges looked off, too shiny, too fake, and their shoulder patches were peeling like they'd been ironed on last minute. My instincts kicked in hard. I knew every licensed security company in our jurisdiction, and this one didn't exist. Karen claimed she had full HOA authority, and these guys were here to ensure compliance. But blocking driveways, threatening residents, impersonating law enforcement, that's not enforcing rules. That's intimidation, and it's illegal. She thought she had all the power. But she had just made one fatal mistake. She brought her fake army to the wrong doorstep. And now, it was my turn to investigate. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of exhaustion, but because something just didn't sit right. I sat at my kitchen table, sipping cold coffee, staring at the stack of violation slips piling up around the neighborhood. This wasn't random. The SUV blockade, the fake security guards, the way Karen barked orders like she was running a private militia, it all reeked of something bigger, something darker. My instincts as a cop were screaming at me now. She wasn't just enforcing rules, she was abusing them. I opened my laptop and started digging. I pulled up the city's business license database, typed in the name of the so-called security company plastered across those black SUVs. Elite Neighborhood Watch Services. Nothing. No license, no business address, just a P.O. box tied to a different name. But then I ran the owner's last name and froze. It matched Karen's maiden name. This wasn't just corruption. This was nepotism in broad daylight. The pieces started falling into place. She'd pushed the board to approve security contracts right after getting elected. Her brother was quietly running a ghost company, funneling HOA money into his pocket while his crew terrorized the people who dared speak out. The most disgusting part? She was targeting those who served our city: nurses, firefighters, teachers, veterans, good people, people too exhausted to fight back. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Mark, the firefighter down the street. "Chief, they parked their SUV in front of the fire hydrant. Again. We wouldn't be able to get a truck through in an emergency." My jaw clenched. This wasn't petty anymore. This was a public safety threat. I took a deep breath and started printing. Citations, business records, property maps, photos. I labeled and organized every piece of evidence. I was building a case, not just for a neighborhood dispute, but for something far more serious. Karen thought she was untouchable. She thought no one was watching. She was wrong, because this time, she picked a fight with someone who knows exactly how to bring a corrupt system down, piece by piece. The deeper I dug, the uglier it got. What started as a petty $79 fine had now unraveled into a full-blown operation of greed, deception, and unchecked power. I had papers spread across my kitchen table like a detective at a crime scene. Maps, HOA meeting minutes, property records, financial reports, screenshots of online complaints. And the truth? It was staring back at me, clear as day. Karen Mitchell wasn't just an overzealous HOA board member. She was orchestrating a system that fed off fear and silence. The fake security company, Elite Neighborhood Watch Services, was registered only 3 months ago, conveniently right after Karen took office. The business address? A post office box. The owner? Her brother, Tom Mitchell, who'd already had 3 failed security firms in other states, all with histories of complaints about aggressive behavior and impersonating law enforcement. But this wasn't just about shady business practices. It was about abuse of power on a neighborhood-wide scale. I mapped every citation issued since Karen joined the board. 47 violations. 35 of them were given to first responders and essential workers, people like Sarah the ER nurse, Mark the firefighter, the Martinez family, and even Mrs. Chen, the elderly widow who was fined $200 for hanging red lanterns during Lunar New Year. Coincidence? Not a chance. Then came the bombshell. With help from my department's records team, I accessed HOA financial reports and found proof that Karen had pushed for increased HOA fines while redirecting a significant portion of the budget toward her brother's company. Even worse, there was no board approval for those payments. Conflict of interest? Absolutely. Criminal? Possibly. And it didn't stop there. I discovered that Karen had been running an unlicensed daycare out of her garage, directly violating the very HOA regulations she used to fine others for so much less. Hypocrisy at its finest. No permits, no inspections, no disclosure to the board. The same woman who fined a veteran for his non-regulation flag had children crammed into a makeshift playroom in her home. My final piece came when Officer Rodriguez burst into my office, breathless. "Chief," he said, holding his phone out, "they just tried to boot Dr. Thompson's car in front of the emergency room entrance." That was it. This wasn't just HOA drama anymore. This was interference with emergency services. I sat back, heart pounding, not from fear, but from clarity. This was the moment. Everything I'd uncovered wasn't just evidence. It was ammunition, and I was ready to fire. Karen had built her little empire of control brick by brick, believing no one would dare question her. But she never expected one of her targets to fight back with the full weight of law and justice behind him. She'd spent months watching us, recording us, judging us. But now, we were watching her, and she was about to answer for every single thing she'd done. The timing couldn't have been better, almost like fate was setting the stage. A text pinged on my phone from one of my sergeants. "Karen just submitted a proposal for expanded HOA security. Emergency meeting tomorrow night." I smiled, slowly leaning back in my chair. After weeks of silent investigation, of listening, collecting, documenting, this was it. The trap had been set, and Karen had just walked straight into it. The next evening, the community center buzzed with quiet tension. Folding chairs filled quickly as neighbors trickled in, some curious, others angry, all tired of living under the tyranny of Karen's clipboard. She stood at the front of the room in a sleek beige pantsuit, heels clicking confidently as she shuffled her stack of papers. On the surface, she looked composed, even smug. But I noticed her eyes darting to the doors, scanning the crowd. She didn't know I was there yet. Not in uniform, not with a badge. Just another neighbor in jeans and a jacket, sitting quietly in the back row with a manila folder on my lap. Karen began her presentation with her usual theatrical flair, complete with a PowerPoint titled, "Securing Our Future: Modern Safety Measures for a Modern Community." She talked about surveillance cameras, round-the-clock patrols, and stricter fines for repeat offenders. She even proposed using HOA funds to expand contracts with her brother's security company, all in the name of neighborhood safety. The room was silent, not because they agreed, but because most were too intimidated to speak. That's what fear does. It silences good people. She wrapped up with a self-satisfied smile. "Now, if there are no objections, I'd like to move forward with a vote," she said, already turning to hand out ballots. That's when I stood up. "Before we vote," I said calmly, my voice cutting through the stillness, "I think there's something everyone in this room deserves to know." Karen froze. Slowly she turned, squinting to recognize me. The moment her eyes widened, I knew she'd made the connection. "For those who don't know," I continued, stepping forward, "my name is James Mitchell. I've lived here for 15 years. I'm also the chief of police for our city." Gasps echoed across the room. Karen's clipboard slipped from her hands, papers fluttering to the floor. Her brother, seated in the back near the door, looked like he wanted to disappear into his folding chair. I walked to the front, placed my folder on the podium, and opened it. In the last 3 months, 47 citations have been issued in our community. 35 of those were to first responders, nurses, firefighters, police officers, teachers, elderly veterans. I flipped open the first map, a color-coded layout showing the clustered targeting of specific homes. This isn't enforcement. This is harassment. I turned the page and clicked the projector remote. An image of Karen's unlicensed daycare center appeared on the screen. This is a photo of an illegal daycare operation being run out of a residential home in violation of both HOA rules and state law. Karen stammered. You had no right. This is private." "Public records aren't private," I interrupted. "And neither are the contracts your brother's company received, without board approval. A company, I should add, that isn't even licensed under our state's private security contractor laws." Whispers turned into murmurs. Murmurs turned into outrage. I kept going. This same company has been documented blocking emergency vehicle access, issuing fake tickets, and impersonating law enforcement. That's not just unethical. It's a crime. One by one, neighbors stood up. Mrs. Chen spoke first, voice trembling but loud. "She fined me $200 for celebrating Lunar New Year." Mark raised his hand. "My kids almost lost their basketball hoop because of her nonsense." Sarah, the ER nurse, held back tears. "I got 8 citations just for working night shifts." Karen tried to retreat, but Mr. Jenkins, the HOA president, stepped in front of the exit. "Not so fast," he said. "We're not finished here." The room swelled with a sense of justice, a wave of unity rising from months of frustration. I showed every document, every fake fine, every double standard, every shady contract. Karen's voice cracked. "I was trying to protect the community." "No," I said quietly. "You were protecting your ego and your bank account." Mr. Jenkins raised his hand. I motioned to remove Karen Mitchell from the board immediately and permanently. "All in favor?" Every single hand went up. In that moment, the power Karen had clung to so tightly, crushed under the weight of the truth. And just like that, the house of cards she built came tumbling down. Karen's carefully constructed empire didn't crumble quietly. It imploded in front of a packed room, under the weight of her own lies. The moment every single hand in the room went up to vote her off the board, you could almost hear the air rush out of her lungs. Her confident posture shattered. Her face, once smug and self-assured, had gone pale. Her fingers trembled as she clutched the edge of the table, her perfectly manicured nails digging into the wood like she was trying to hold on to the last shred of control. "No, no, you can't do this," she stammered, eyes darting around the room, looking for anyone, to back her up. But there was no one left. Even her brother looked away, avoiding her gaze as two uniformed officers stepped forward to escort him outside for questioning. Karen's voice rose, shrill and desperate now. "I was maintaining standards. I was protecting our property values." "No," I said, firmly but calmly. "You were punishing people who couldn't fight back." Then came the final blow, the moment her mask finally cracked. Mrs. Thompson, the oldest member of the HOA board, stood up slowly and faced her. "Karen, I supported you once, but not anymore. You used our trust to bully our neighbors, to enrich your family, and to shame the very people who serve our city." Karen's eyes welled up, but not with remorse. With rage, she grabbed her purse, shoved the papers off the table in a flurry, and stormed toward the exit. But again, Mr. Jenkins stood in her way. "You're not walking out until we finish this," he said. Tears of frustration spilled down Karen's cheeks as she shouted, "This isn't over!" But deep down, everyone in that room knew it was. The applause that followed wasn't loud. It was steady, powerful, a release of months of built-up fear, silence, and quiet suffering. And in that moment, something shifted. The neighborhood didn't just lose a tyrant, it found its voice again. In the days that followed Karen's dramatic fall from grace, something extraordinary happened. Peace returned to our neighborhood. The once tense sidewalks felt lighter. Conversations flowed more easily between neighbors. Children played in driveways again without fear of being cited for chalk drawings or noisy laughter. And for the first time in a long time, the community felt like exactly that, a community. Karen had packed up and moved out within the week. Her brother's security vehicles vanished with her, replaced by legitimate local patrols ensuring safety the right way, with respect and transparency. But it wasn't just the departure of a toxic influence that changed everything. It was the way people came together. We weren't just neighbors anymore. We were witnesses to one another's strength. At the community barbecue organized by Mrs. Thompson, a retired school principal who took over as interim HOA chair, residents shared stories. Not just about fines or frustrations, but about resilience, compassion, and standing up for what's right. We laughed, cried, and for the first time in months, felt heard. As I watered my lawn one morning, now proudly 3.5 inches tall, Sarah's daughter came running up to me with a handmade card. Inside was a crayon drawing of me in my uniform standing in front of her house, under a rainbow, with the words, "Thank you for making our neighborhood happy again." That card now sits framed on my desk at the station. It reminds me that sometimes the most meaningful police work doesn't happen in a squad car. It happens right at home. This story isn't just about one bad neighbor or a crooked security company. It's about a bigger truth. Power is not about control. It's about service. Rules should protect, not punish. Leadership should lift others up, not tear them down. And when faced with injustice, no matter how small it seems, it's never too late to say enough. To anyone listening, especially our older generation who've seen neighborhoods rise and fall over the years, remember this. Your voice still matters. Your experience, your values, your sense of fairness, these are anchors in any community. And when we choose courage over convenience, when we protect one another instead of turning a blind eye, we create something that no rulebook ever could. A place worth calling home. In the end, Karen taught us more than she realized. Not by her leadership, but by her failure. And in standing together, we proved that truth, integrity, and community will always outlast fear and control.